Today on Church Spotlight, we sit down with LaVoy Hart, pastor of New Life Church, a place where lives are changed. After months of us trying to coordinate our calendars, we finally were able to successfully set a date and be here together today. And so I just would like to say thank you for taking time to be with us and to invite us to your church.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Okay, we've known each other since we've been kids,
Yeah.
and I guess you could say that we were neighbors. We were a couple of streets apart from each other, and so we grew up together. Did you ever, in your wildest dreams, ever think that you would become a minister?
Lord, no. Never.
I'll have to say I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was not ever in my mind thinking I would ever be a minister. Actually, I had no focus on life at all. I just kind of flew by the seat of my pants up until I met Jesus, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Then he turned everything around.
Oh yeah.
And upside down.
And upside down and done it again. So.
Yeah. Well, I know you come from really rich heritage. Your grandpa was a pastor or a minister, and although I never sat under his ministry, we did go attend a church together at Escatawba Assembly for many, many years. And I'll have to say he was a very precious man of God, and he had a godly influence on my life, and I'm sure yours as well.
Most definitely. My grandfather was just such a great man of God, and even when you're out in the world in sin and doing your thing, I always knew, that I had him to lean on. I knew he was praying for me. So
sure.
I grew up in church, when I was a kid, but right before my teenage years, about 9 or 10 years old, was when my parents went their separate ways, and that kind of knocked church out. And so I didn't go to church no more, and might have went maybe a handful of times, with my grandfather, when he would beg and beg and beg, but kind of ended that. So the rest of my teenage years and everything else just got me so far out, in drugs and everything else. But my grandfather was always there for me and praying for me. And I think he was ordained in the Assembly of God faith for 68 years.
Wow.
As ordained minister, and it takes 2 or 3 years to get to that level, of schooling. So he's probably 70 years of ministry altogether.
Right.
So
yeah, it had to have an impact on your life.
Oh, it most
absolutely
definitely did. Especially after I received the Lord and started preaching myself. He lived several years after that, and it was just such a blessing. I went out on the field evangelizing. I'd carry him with me. I preached in churches that he started under brush arbor meetings.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Actually, we started in a cow field, one of them,
really?
under a brush arbor.
Yeah.
And the church was called Grace Chapel. It's up in on the backside of Waynesboro, and it was an awesome experience to be able to do that, and to have him there with me.
Oh yeah.
Knowing that he was the founder of it was just a great experience for me, to walk in those shoes, so to speak.
Right.
It was awesome.
Right. Everything to kind of come full circle. Yeah. Well, I know that he was an impact in your life.
Oh, yeah.
But I'll have to say, the very first time that I ever heard you preach, I remember, and it's been several years since that time, I remember what you preached on, and that's saying a lot. That's an impact.
Yeah.
In my life, that I remember your topic, and you preached on crying. That you can cry out to God.
Yes.
So, was that your first time to preach?
No, actually, it wasn't my first time to preach. I had preached revivals and preached in the prisons, and preached a good bit actually before then. But it was the first time to preach in our home church. The power of a cry, and it brings back a lot of memories.
Yeah.
Talked about that subject, about how you can cry out to God in your distresses. Psalms 107, I believe, is where I took my text from. And I think there's 5 or 6 different groups of people that is speaking out there about that they cried unto the Lord in their distresses, and He delivered them out of their trouble.
Right.
So, the cry that we have is a God-given natural thing that we have. You don't have to teach an infant how to cry.
Sure.
When it needs something, it cries.
Right.
And that's what God wants us to use to Him. You know, He says that He takes the tears of the saints and stores them in bottles and places them away. You know, it goes to show just how powerful the cry of a Christian is to God, how much He pays attention to that. Just like a mother, when their baby cries,
Right.
you can pick your child out of a crowd of people's children crying.
It's a fact.
And, you know, and God can do the same thing.
And you want to meet that need, whatever
yes.
it is.
That's right.
You know, and I think that just is a testament of how much God cares about us.
Yes, He does.
That He sees every single tear that
is
ever
right.
falls.
Oh, yeah.
So it sounds like there was a time in your life where that sermon actually took effect.
Yes, it did. Actually, where the Lord gave that sermon to me was it was in Children's Medical Hospital when my son was operated on with his foot. He was born with a handicapped foot and leg and had to undergo some major bone surgery, reconstructive bone surgery. Very painful ordeal for him as a baby, and he was just a little guy, a little baby. And when he come out of surgery, he was just screaming and shaking all over with pain. And me and my wife, you know, we didn't know anything else to do but pray. And the more we would pray, the calmer he would become, and we would begin to pray, and long as we prayed for him, he would get calm and sleep. But when we stopped praying, you know, he would wake back up and he would scream and cry, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," and "Mommy, Mommy." And nothing we did helped him except for praying. And we would pray and cry out with all of our hearts, you know, and here's our baby in such pain that we can do nothing about.
Right.
But we could call on our Heavenly Father and cry out to Him in our distresses, and He come to us and delivered us from our trouble. And all throughout that night we prayed and cried and prayed and cried, and we cried and prayed all night long so he would sleep. And because every time we would try to stop, you know, he would wake back up again.
Right, right.
And the Lord really just dealt with me in that, and that's when I found the scripture in Psalms 107 early that morning. And I was sitting and reading my Bible after we had prayed all night long. We were exhausted.
Sure.
And I showed it to my wife. I said, "Look, this is why every time we quit crying and praying, that He would wake back up." Yeah. And I said, as long as we were crying out, God was paying attention.
Right.
And it changed my life, that night did, and changed my life as a person, as a Christian myself, and my prayer life with the Lord. And it really changed. I realized then that God really pays attention.
Sure He does.
You know, that when we're crying out to Him and our needs, He is really paying attention to it.
Right.
And yeah, it's amazing you remember that.
I do.
That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
We will not count up the
Let's
years.
Don't do that.
But it was a long time ago, but it definitely had an impact on my life. It was, I remember this, I can remember the service.
Wow.
Absolutely. It was a very powerful service and a very powerful message. And I feel it even right now when you say that, because God does care about His children and His people. And, you know, you just can't run from God without His hand being there in His presence, being in your life. So when we come back, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I want us to shift our focus and talk about what God's doing here at the church at New Life, and we're going to do that. There's more Church Spotlight when we return. Welcome back to Church Spotlight. Today we are in East Moss Point at New Life Church with Pastor LaVoy Hart, and I'd like for us to shift our focus a little bit and talk about this church. We are sitting here in a beautiful sanctuary.
Thank you.
But I know it's not always been the case, and you've had a long journey, so I'd like for you to take us on that journey.
Okay. Where would you like me to start?
Well, I know every church has a Katrina story, but I know that yours is maybe a little bit different because y'all met in a tent. For a year and 3 months.
That's exactly right.
And that's a long time to be in a tent. So maybe just, you know, you can hit the highlights for us.
Okay. Well, we was originally, the church that we was at before was called Orange Grove Assembly. And it was totally devastated. So we lost everything that we had there. And a month and a half before Katrina actually hit us, the property that we're on right now was paid off in full by a individual that had started coming to our church and wrote a check for $100,000 and paid the land off.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, a month and a half later, Katrina hit. We lost everything. Only thing we had really to amount to anything was these 5 acres out here paid for. So, you know, everybody was displaced in the storm. About 85% of the congregation we had coming to the church at that time were gone.
Right.
And so we was, mostly the ones that were coming to the church at that time was staying with me in my little trailer out there in Forts Lake. And so we was meeting in my front yard at first, and we had a few people, you know, that stayed with the church, a few families that stayed, and we all didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't really have nothing left. And the Lord just began to open up door after door after door to help us to get to where we are out here now. And one miracle after the next. I mean, when I'm saying miracles, I'm talking about divine miracles. I've never seen God. I've seen them, you know, we grew up in Assembly of God Pentecostal churches, and we've seen divine miracles before.
Sure.
And most of those miracles are usually like healings and things of that sort. I've never seen financial miracles, which we had witnessed a month and a half before the storm. You know, the land being paid off, that's a financial miracle.
Right.
You know, someone to give that amount of money, and these people are not wealthy. You know,
Has to be God.
Had to be God.
Yeah.
Had to be God. Well, then to get out here, well, then miracle after that began to take place because, you know, I mean, I'm battling, not knowing what to do. Should we continue to try to keep this thing together? Just so much destruction and not even a building to repair back.
Right.
What do we do? And so, you know, first thought come to my mind would be let's just close it down and let the people go somewhere that they could get help from. You know, and the Lord just kept dealing with my heart, you know, just hold in there. Stay faithful. Don't give up. Don't quit. Well, I received a phone call at my home. We were meeting in my front yard, and I had prayed about it all evening the night before, and we were meeting the next Sunday morning there, and I was going to let everybody know to try to find somewhere to go. And a pastor from Indiana, which I'd never met in my life, didn't know nobody in his church, called me and had not received any calls in nor out on my cell phone when I got this call. And he was explaining to me how they had been praying about coming to the coast, and they didn't just want to come at random or give their money to the organization or anything like that. They wanted God to direct them. And they had prayer meetings on this, and which I thought was really, really cool. And they had been praying and praying about it. And if you're familiar with Pentecost, you understand about the message in tongues and interpretation and, you know, the gifts of the Spirit moving like that. And they had a message in tongues and interpretation given out in their prayer meeting and spoke my name. And I don't know of another Lavoy, you know, especially a Lavoy Hart.
Sure.
And said that that's who they were to help on the coast. So they searched me out and found me and got my cell phone number, called the Assembly of God district and everything, and got my number from our headquarters and called me. And I was fixing to tell everybody to, you know, let's just disperse and go somewhere else and get help, you know, all you can get. And he was so emotional on the phone with me, telling me, don't do whatever you're going to do. Whatever it is you're going to do, don't do it. You know, and he told me the story, and we were disconnected. To make a long story short, that's the church that came down and brought guitars, sound equipment, a tent, 130 chairs to go in the tent.
My goodness.
Built me a little storage building to put all of our sound equipment in and lock it up after every service. Put us back in business again as a church.
Yeah.
Mind you, it wasn't a building, but it was a place out from underneath the hot sun. We were grateful to have it.
Right.
You know? So we started then in that tent, and a year and 3 months later, we went into a small building.
You know, that's a long time.
That's a long time.
I mean, I can only imagine you have to put everything away every single
Every service.
service, and just a lot of work, and it almost just sounds like the little church that could.
Yeah.
You
Have
know?
you ever heard of a church's expense being on off?
No.
We had to set aside a certain amount of money each week, month actually, to go to Sam's and buy off.
Oh, you mean off as in bug spray?
Yes.
Okay.
So the
Gotcha.
people could have it there.
Right.
Skin So Soft and
Right.
off and things like that. We had to buy all that stuff to make sure any visitors that may come, we didn't want them to get up and leave because they couldn't handle the bugs.
Right.
The gnats and mosquitoes were
Yeah.
terrible.
Right, right.
Oh my God.
Never
It was-
thought of that.
Yes,
Yeah, but
yeah.
you lived through it.
We lived through it.
And it's a beautiful church, beautiful
thank you very
sanctuary.
much.
I know you've just extended the platform.
Yes.
Trying to accommodate all the musicians.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and you have instruments to play on.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we've come so far.